Most of the time for me, I think figuring out where to start a new project is the hardest part. It's like this blank page and there are all these possibilities and there are almost too many choices for me. So I thought I would walk you through first steps as I start another project. This is some fabric that I have dyed myself, and it has just been heat bonded to a piece of standard felt. I find that felt's fine for me for these types of projects to stitch on. I like having that little extra padding, and I don't like to work with a hoop, so it gives it some stability for the stitches. I can do like long bullion stitches and things and not worry about stuff going to pull together. If you like working with a hoop, more power to you. What attracted me to this piece of fabric and why I wanted to use it was all these different streaks. I thought this is really cool, and I could just take some threads and start embroidering, following the lines, and just kind of freeform it. And I was thinking I could do that. What doesn't attract me is this color that's like this kind of a coral washed out something. And I know I was using the last of India inks. It's probably like, watered down terracotta. It just doesn't excite me as much, and I never really found another color that would go with it. But I thought, well, let's just take a look at what I have in my stash. I do have a lot of greens, but these other things I'm just not so sure about. So first I went to fibers, and I do have, this is some banana fiber, it's just some yarn and some other yarn. So I could definitely do something couching. I could follow my lines with one or with all of these. I could do, one of the things I like to do, which is the squiggly. I'm probably not going to couch with this yarn, but I could use it for an accent for something else. I'm going to remove that one. I like both of these, and they're completely different tones, so I kind of have to decide which way I want to go. This one feels a little light or a little dark. This lighter one feels like it's more appropriate, so I'm going to eliminate this one. Now, another thing I could do, I did find if I was a pink person, I could go a completely different direction and just build up the pinks. It's not doing it for me. I'm just not a pink person. I will probably end up dyeing these threads, and that's fine. This one I could see possibly using. That would be a good accent with that, so I'm going to keep this one out, but I'm moving the pinks out of the way. Then, did I have any colored lace? Well, it's a little too something. I don't know. It doesn't quite work for me, so I'm taking that one out, but I really like this one. And this is all from the same, I don't know what it was that I got at the thrift store, but it's got all these different types of lace, and it's kind of stretchy. You can do things with, if you've got like something that's stretched like this, you can make your own holy lace and, start expanding the holes, and that could be kind of fun to play with. So there's that, and it does tend to go okay with this kind of, sort of, almost like the darker part of it. So that's a maybe. That can stay. I did find some beads. So I'm thinking, as I get to the end, these beads are going to look really cool. And then I went to my silks, and I had these, and they all have potential. So I could, just do collage. I could take some small pieces of silk and kind of do like a patchwork collage on there. That might be kind of interesting. And I had this see-through material, which is really fun to play with, and it frays nicely. I could decide that I want to push all that back, and maybe I would, so I don't know, maybe I could, make a hole and stitch some of that down, and you would still see some of the pattern coming through, but I don't think so. So I'm kind of torn. I don't have a lot of embroidery threads in these colors, but this one seemed to have all the colors. And this one had all the colors. Here's some, and that's kind of it. So again, it's okay, because with a variety of stitches, and then of course I always picture some beads going on afterwards. They're going to add some sparkle. I have these, but I can also then bring in some small seed beads that have a little bit of sparkle, and that would be fun. I think it's going to be couching. And I think I want to do just this random, let it all fall down, because it'll cover a lot of ground, and yet you're still going to see the pattern behind. And it's not a really big piece of material. So, although I could bring in some other things to couch with it, I might just use this to couch it down. That would be fun. And that's probably too busy as it is if I want to have room to add stitches. So let's see. Just kind of want to accent the colors. If I had the same kind of a fiber or something close to it in that darker green, I would add that in, but I don't. So I could, however, couch it. But now as I'm looking at this, it feels kind of busy. And there's nothing wrong with busy. Nothing wrong with it. But I have to think about, what am I going to fill this in with? You know, I could make it very easy on myself and just literally just do seed stitch everywhere in between. Seed stitch and French knots. Maybe in any of the places that are enclosed, I could do French knots. And then I might do seed stitch. But I know me, I don't tend to fill a whole lot of area like that. I could also get something else down first. So say I wanted to do some longer stitches. There's something that's longer that's in a color that works. Let's grab just this floss. So I could maybe do some back stitch, just kind of randomly around, kind of like it was couching. So just kind of random there, or following my lines. I kind of liking the idea of maybe following my lines, kind of liking this idea. And then I would have some open spots. So what if we did this with this material? And we started in one corner and we had the bulk of it in this more blank spot. It's a little more visually interesting to me than trying to cover the whole thing. For some reason, this appeals to me. So I kind of like this idea. I know me and pins, it'll take me twice as long to do something like that. So even though it can shift a little bit over time, I am going to just see if I can tack this down. And you know, the nice thing about couching, you can always come in and add some more of your, you know, the stuff that you're couching down. You can always come in and hide your little, you know, end if that's something that matters to you. I kind of like to leave myself room so that at the end I can add some knots or something. And this is just sewing machine thread that I've got. It's not, you know, it's just kind of using up my stash from there. Oh, and the needle that I threaded, you guys aren't going to be able to see this. Let me grab a different one. I threaded the broken needle. Oh, these are both broken needles. That would be why they were setting off to the side here. Let's get a different needle. Needles do break. Let's see if we're back in business now. So, oh wow, a needle that actually comes up through the fabric easily. That's what you want to see. And I don't think I'm going to try and do anything fancy with the couching. Okay, we're just going to every so often come up, and if I only do a few stitches to hold it in place, that gives me some freedom to move them around a little bit if I decide as I'm going that I want to do it a little bit differently. And if you've watched my videos before, you'll know I do tend to like to start with something couched down, because you can certainly do it after you've been stitching for a while, but I find it a little bit easier to get this part down first. And it's interesting because when I gathered up all the different things that matched in this color family, I really thought I was going to go a different direction with this piece. And I can still change my mind, you know, with just doing some tacking stitches, it's easy enough to come in and, you know, cut them off. If I decide, nope, I don't like this, or I want it to be all green. The whole idea for me about any kind of art that I am trying to do is, you know, there's only one question I want to answer. Am I having a good time? If I am not having a good time, why am I doing it? It just doesn't make any sense. And I see people, okay, I see people doing what I used to do, which is I watch a video and I think, oh, wow, that's really cool. I've got all those materials. I'm going to do that. Or I don't have all those materials. I'm going to go shopping and then I'm going to do that. But I forget that sometimes, you know, there's just art that we enjoy looking at. It's not necessarily something we want to do. If you don't like to couch, don't couch. I can't stand to do satin stitch. I love to watch people do satin stitch because it feels like the lines just get filled in right before my eyes. I'm just kind of overwhelmed at the beauty that these people come up with. I just do not like doing it. So you will probably not see it. You might see some back stitch, split back stitch that I might use to fill something in, but you are probably not going to see me do satin stitch. I probably had to do it in Girl Scouts or Brownies or, you know, wherever it was that we got a badge for something like that. And that was the last time. You know, and it's not just with stitch. Also, pay attention to the materials that you like. Some people might have an allergic reaction to certain materials, but other people have, you know, a tactile reaction. You know, maybe you don't like the way this fiber feels. Maybe the lace feels funky to you. I have been working for the last year to eliminate things that just don't make me happy to pick up. Or I had to get rid of all my Gilder's paste because I love the effect that it gave. And no, I haven't used it on fabric, but I did love the effect that it gave in collages. But there was a smell associated with it, and I got an instant headache. I'm using up all my alcohol inks for the same reason, is the smells, even with a fan going, even with a mask on. It's like, you know, it takes some of the fun out of it for me if I have to worry about getting a headache while I'm working on a project, or if something feels funny, you know, in my hands. Sometimes there's a book that I will get at the bookstore, and it's got a texture that's on the cover that it's not quite plastic and it's not quite fabric. Not the Batsford books. I like the feel of the Batsford books. There's some other kind, and I don't know what it is, but it just, it irks me, and I have to put a towel on the outside of the book or make a book cover or something because I can't stand to feel it. But then I'm weird like that about texture. Texture is my word. If you ask me the one thing that matters most to me in the art that I'm creating, it's always going to be texture. And texture seems to be my thing with food too. My husband laughs. He can tell if he has something for the first time, and he'll take a bite of it and he'll say, you won't be able to handle the texture. You won't like this. And he's always right. So, you know, you get to know yourself over time. If you don't know these things about yourself yet, it's okay. Just don't go invest a lot in one thing or another until you figured out if it's something you like. I mean, ideally, you can find another crafter in your area that might have whatever it is. It's like, you know, gee, do you have any of this, you know, wool thread? Because maybe you don't like the feel of sewing with wool thread. It's a completely different feeling to stitch with wool thread and to stitch with silk thread and to stitch with normal thread. So if you can go somewhere and maybe try some stuff out, you might find you spend less money on stuff that you have to later get rid of, and you might be a little bit happier. Maybe. I don't know. It could happen. All right, here. We're going to tie this one off. I have stitched on this same, this is like an old sheet that I know that I've dyed, and I have stitched on it without a backing fabric, and it's so thin that without a hoop, it's really not any fun to stitch on. Okay, I messed myself up, and that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going to kind of come up with something, and I should have some more thread in the other needle that has no point. How in the world I ended up with two? I mean, normally I'm really good about throwing them away. Normally the way I break a needle is if I've got some fabric that I have painted and it's too thick in one spot and I'm not paying attention, and so I'm going through like several layers of painted fabric with, you know, I just abuse my stuff. What can I say? I'm abusing my materials. All right, this one we're going to curve it just a little back into the pink, I think. Yeah. And we'll start at this end. Yeah, and so I'm thinking I'm going to start after the couching is down. I'm probably going to do bullion knots. And I'm going to see how it will look, I think, with this, like this, the shades in that. So I think I'm going to do bullion knots because they will fill in some other spaces. And I like to do those first. The blue piece that I'm working on right now, I saved them towards the end, and I was kind of frustrated. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's not like it's the end of the world. It's just a little frustrating to realize now I've got to figure out where I can fit them in around all the other stuff. And, you know, that's part of the challenge, of the design challenge. It's part of the fun. And I love doing the bullion stitch. It's one of my favorite stitches. It's my go-to. There's probably always going to be bullion stitches on something that I'm doing. And, you know, we all get our favorites. And then there are stitches that we just keep trying to master. You know, there are a few. I'm not going to tell you what they are right now because hopefully I'm going to master them. And I am working on the videos, the stitch series. So just very short videos to show you the different stitches. I know there's a lot of them out there, but I want to have a library of them on my channel. Now I'm kind of feeling, before, let's look at this. Okay, if this is right side up, maybe I want that one to go. Let's see what we have left here. Got this one going up, so I might, yeah, kind of like that over there. So this is always awkward doing this on camera because I normally have my pillow. And actually I have a wool mat also that works for this, and I just forgot to bring it over before I turned on the camera. Again, not a big deal. Now, if you feel compelled to fill all your spaces, go for it. I'm kind of looking at it as a place for the eye to rest. And I could, let's see, it's not the right color, but I could always come up here with some kind of a something. I could make a big cluster and put a big cluster up there in that space, which might be interesting. I don't know. Or I could just decide down the road, nope, I need more, and wherever the end is, you know, and add some more there. I could make a big old pile of knots on that. But right now, I'm sort of feeling like that's what I'm going to go with. Most of it's tacked down, so that's what I'm going to go with. Sometimes I wish that I was the kind of person that could plan some of the stuff out. And I do sort of plan, but I think it's why I have a hard time doing some things is because I don't plan them out. I don't think ahead. But I guess you just got to figure out the way your brain works. You know, I think back into school, how you always had to do reports a certain way. You know, if you didn't turn in your papers the same way that the teacher was expecting to see them, there was going to be a problem. And I always seem to march to my own drummer, you know, which makes for great art. But when you're trying to do all the things right to get the good grades in school, maybe it's not so great. All right. So I figured getting this couch down, getting this started, making some decisions on what to eliminate. Because if you have too many things to choose from, you're not going to choose anything. You're just going to say, nope, it's too much. I can't do it. Now, I can tell you right now, the one thing that's starting to make me think is balance. And I might need to add one empty space, yes, but this almost looks like I've cut my page in half. So I am thinking what I'm going to do, let's get this part down here. All right, that's enough to hold it. All right, here I'm going to fix it. I'm going to decide how much I want. Where do I want it to go? Maybe I want to come right back into there, and it's almost like a flower loop. It could be a figure 8, but it just needs a little bit in that corner. Just a little bit. Or I could, no, I don't like that. I like it kind of coming in. Okay, we're just gonna, once you start piling some more knots against here and fill this in with knots. I like that idea. When I'm at this stage of something like this, I consider these all doodle cloths. This is laid out in such a way that it could absolutely be a vessel. It could be a wall hanging. It could be a journal cover, if you don't mind having the bumpy part in the center where the spine's going to go. But right now, I'm just doodling. I am just thread doodling and figuring things out and practicing stitches. Because, you know, I haven't been doing this that long. I mean, I don't count the stuff I did as a kid as really, you know, I didn't learn stitches back then. I really didn't. So I see if I have enough thread to make this work. Just enough to hold it mostly in place. Okay. And I'm just going to come. I have a little bit of thread left, but we can make it work. You can absolutely make it work. All right, just enough to hold down this other end, and that'll be a good stopping point for today. There's just enough left, maybe. I'm really bad about using like every last little inch of thread, which is just crazy because, you know, I've got another spool of thread right there, but I hate threading needles. It's one of my least favorite things to do is to thread a needle, which is why I get into trouble with thread tangling and knotting, because when your threads are too long, that's what's going to happen. Every time you pull it through the material, it twists. All right, there we go. First steps on something new. I'll be back to show you where it goes next.